All right, guys, welcome to the Buff Show. Today we have a super good episode coming your way. We got Steve Pierce with Pierce Design and Build with us.
Hi
Thank
there.
you.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Austin, you're here. Absolutely. As always,
Yep,
our trusted co-host. So, no, Steve actually was on one of our first episodes of this podcast, and we did kind of a show on what to look for when hiring a general contractor and builder. Steve is a renowned general contractor here in northern Utah and builds incredible homes. We collaborate with them during the Parade of Homes and help them with their, like, kind of man their home shows. And you guys build some impressive houses.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We love working with you guys too.
Well, thank you. And he just, all of this year, he was president of the Northern Utah Home Builders Association. So he's very involved and knows his stuff. So today I wanted to do an episode on land and kind of the process of, if you're a buyer and you're looking to buy land to build your dream home, what are some of the things you should watch out for? Because there's all those horror stories of people buying land and then they realize they don't have water or the sewer system. Like, there's just crazy stuff. And to name a few, I just had clients, they're buying a house in the Highlands in Eden.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that kind of the sellers own this lot as well, and it could come with the house to protect their view, and they wanted to get the lot. Well, as we dove into the lot, we found out that the water and sewer fees with Wolf Creek Water and Sewer were over $40,000 just to connect.
Just to connect.
And I think a lot of people don't, like, if you don't, because every area is different. So that's why we're doing this. I'm sure you run into it all the time. In fact, I call you a lot. I'm like, we have clients looking in this area. Can you meet with them? Can you walk the site? There's just so much that goes into, like, building a house that I think people don't realize. So
that story with the Highlands, if I can just hijack it here for a second, is cool because, a few years ago, you all know the deal that you could buy a lot there and pay the $40,000, and then they would tell you you can't build because we're not going to supply you with water.
Yeah.
You get to pay us, and you get to pay us monthly, but you can't build anything because our wells are low. Yeah. So
that was 2021, right?
Yeah,
when it was the water moratorium.
18 months or something that just no one could build. You still had to pay your fees, and
everything was on pause over there.
so.
Well, and what was crazy is I looked back because that lot had been previous sold a handful of times, and it was maybe 5 years ago. The connection fees were $9,000.
Yeah.
It went from $9,000 to $40,000, and I'm just like, man, if you just bite the bullet and, like, it almost should be required if you're selling a lot that is in this community where it should be buildable, you should have everything you need in order to build, but it's not that way. I have another lot in Eden, and we can't even get water to it. He's 11th on the wait list to get water, so he cannot build until this water company fixes I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about, but until they fix their water supply issues. So they overpromised on what they could deliver. A developer developed the ground, didn't have the shares already paid for tied to each lot, and so left it open so that people could pay for them on their own, and which makes sense for the developer, but then future buyers 10, 20 years down the road are now getting in big messes from this. So things to be aware of. So first thing, if you're looking at land, the first thing you need to jump into and figure out if you have is your utilities, water, your sewer, your power, and your gas. So let's just start out with water. If you're buying a lot, you're either going to have probably culinary water or a well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, Steve, you can talk about a little bit about these private water companies and what you run into on a daily basis, and wells too, because I'm sure you've done both.
We have done.
What does that process look like from, like, a builder standpoint? Because in order to get your building permit, you have to have proof of water, right?
Correct. That is correct. And so if there's not culinary water provided, let's just go to the well. I think one of the things, and I'll just go to some pitfalls, is that while you may be able to drill a well on that property, you still can't draw water out of it until you actually buy water shares.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is governed by the state and facilitated by county or city or whatever. But it's one thing to be able to drill a well, the feasibility of that, which you can check. But the second thing is you have to actually be able to buy water shares. And water shares are allocated for culinary, irrigation, or both. There is a whole thing. And that can depend on how many shares you can buy. Number one, availability. We had a situation up in Eden a while back where they were looking for shares, and the company says, or the water regulatory agency said, it's just their shares are sold on the open market. You're just going to have to go find them.
Oh my gosh.
And so that can be a thing too. So just dive into the water situation and find out not only the well feasibility, which a driller can tell you, and those kinds of things, but
there's always unknowns with drilling a well though too, because you just
There
don't know
is.
how deep you're going to go. Like my dad's done 5 wells, I think, in his time. No, probably more than that, because in the ridges he did 3 wells.
You gotta go deep in the ridge.
And one of his wells failed, and so it's just like there's a lot of unknowns. So obviously, if the areas where you would need a well, like they're prettier, they're mountainous, like they're nice areas to live, but you just have to realize the cost to build there's probably going to be higher because there's not private water companies.
So it's not just the cost to build, which even just that could fluctuate greatly depending on the depth you've got to go.
Yeah.
But once you've got that, then you're saying on top of it, you've got to buy the shares to that water.
Before you drill.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
yeah, you have to, yeah, you cannot, all the water is owned by the state.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you have to buy allocated shares so that you don't draw down the aquifers too much, or one person doesn't take too much. And a lot of times they'll monitor them. So we usually tell our clients that if we've got a well situation, you need to plan on it may be under it, but at least about $100,000 to get a well in.
That's a good number. Yeah. And then
That's my experience. You may have different.
yeah, I've seen it lower, but
I have too.
it depends on, like you always want to shoot high, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if it's 50 grand, you're like, great, we are under budget.
So really, kind of side note, I love that we're doing this podcast because I feel like we get calls all the time with people that have good dreams. Like, you got to dream, you got to start somewhere, but they do not know even just what we shared so far. Like, they are almost have an entry level budget, and so something like this, to where if you have to double the depth of your well, or one thing goes wrong, all of a sudden their dream of building isn't really suitable for them yet. So I think
I
it's gonna
have, and if, again, consultation is key on everything. Talk to people and talk to them thoroughly. You talk to a well driller who is familiar with that area,
Sure.
and he can give you some insight. He can't give you guarantees, but he can certainly say, yeah, I've done a few around there, and we're usually here. I know the aquifer and where it goes, and help. Like I say, I think the most expensive one that for me that we've ended up doing was a little over 80,000. So that 100,000 number was being very cautious, but usually $50,000-$60,000 we can get it done. But
Sure.
it just depends on some factors.
It's good to have some extra
Reserves.
cushion in
Yeah,
there for sure.
100%.
Yep.
Do you use the well witchers?
I have used them.
Yeah, that's crazy. They walk around with these rods and they're L-shaped, and they will walk around and they'll be out like this. And when they cross a water aquifer,
They'll cross each other.
How good are they? How accurate have you guys?
It's mind blowing.
yeah,
Really?
Yeah, it's eerie.
Oh, well, that's a
I've seen him use it to find like water lines.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, and I've used it. He'll be like, "Put these in your hand, and you'll walk, and you don't hold them tight, and then they just
You can
like
feel
when
them.
you walk and you cross the stream of water, they'll go.
Wild.
It's crazy.
And it's something with magnetism, or
I don't know.
knows?
Really?
Yeah. They call them well witchers or water witchers.
Magic.
Yep. Water witching.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, water. That's the first one. Make sure you have water. If it's culinary water, who's the provider? Is it public or private? Are there shares available? What are the costs? Is there a wait list? What's the assessments? How much water can you get? Is there secondary water? Can you, like, what are you going to use for irrigation? If you're on like a bunch of ground and you want to have some pasture, like a well typically isn't big enough to irrigate as well if you have like an acre or two. So just research the water, figure out exactly what you're getting, what the cost is going to be, and then talk to neighbors like Steve said, because if you're buying in an area that needs a well, you can talk to the neighbors. Like, I'm on a well and I have wells all around my house. One other thing to keep in mind with the well is a well can only be like once you drill a well, there's a protection area around the well. Is it 100 feet?
100 feet usually.
100-foot radius, and so you cannot have a septic system within 100 feet of that. So if you're doing a septic system, you got to have this all mapped out, and that's where somebody like Steve can kind of help you at.
There's also some build restrictions. I think it's a little closer with buildings. I think maybe in a 50-foot with a driveway or something like that, but there are also restrictions that way.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you guys, secondary water, is there a rule of thumb on what kind of properties generally have that at their disposal, or is it just a mixed bag of?
I've never seen any. Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
I think most of the modern subdivisions, they almost require it as part of the development to have that in there. But
Depends on what area. Like down on the Wasatch Front, you see secondary all the time. Like there's Pineview Water Company, and like a lot of like our houses that we've lived in along the Wasatch Front had secondary, which was sweet.
Yep. Stuff Ogden does, I think.
But in the valley, in Eden, Huntsville, Liberty, Morgan, like you don't really have a lot of secondary water providers. There's like the farmers do. So I would say in the case where you really, if you're just doing grass and stuff like that, if you're not going way elaborate, you should be fine on culinary or a well. A well should be able to keep up with that. But if you're wanting to irrigate pasture or farm, you for sure need some irrigation water.
Sure.
That can be pressurized, it can be flood irrigation, and normally that shares in like a private water company.
right.
So,
I would like to add one thing on water too,
Yeah.
and I think we've touched on it, but I'm just thinking more in the mode of safety when you're purchasing a lot, because I have seen people buy lots and be stuck with different things. Is if it is a private water company and it has a public utility water coming into it, a stub, go to them and get in writing that they will give you a can and will serve letter to build on that lot. Because that's a lot of people that get caught in that morass up there. And with our unpredictable water years, sometimes if their wells aren't pumping, the state requires them to shut it down and not allow new customers. So check and see if they will give you a can and will serve letter, which will be required to build.
and those typically are good for a year.
I
Or
think
two.
so.
Yeah.
I don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
I think there is a time limit on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's jump into the next one. So it'd be sewer. What are the most common sewer systems you see and have dealt with, Steve?
It's been a little of both, public sewer and septic. I haven't had any real problems usually with the public sewer systems. That's usually pretty straightforward. The as-builts will tell you there's a stub in there. It's a little bit of a risk. You know, we've run into in some subdivisions where, all utilities are stubbed. They're all in there. The as-built show they're in there. It's still not 100% guarantee, but the mitigation is not quite as, if you've got to go into the street and hook up to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we always verify, number one, that the as-built show that they're stubbed into the lot. And then we also verify that they're in the street and where they're in the street. So in case we have to go out there, it's not much more than a $10,000 or $12,000, $15,000 expense at the most to grab them into the street.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so as far as connection fee, though, so that 10, 15 you're talking about, that's if you've got to, like, go into the road or burrow under
Correct.
or whatever. But as far as connection fees, what are we looking at?
That's all over the map that
Is
I've
it?
found.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're in like, say, North Ogden or a city, it's fairly minimal, right? Connection fee. But like Powder Mountain Sewer, their connection fee, I think, is like, I can't remember. We'll just say $20,000. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, kind of like
Just
the
to
water
connect. Yeah.
type of situation. Yeah.
So when I was saying that lot, it was $40,000. Part of that was water. Part of that was sewer. You need both. So
Water and sewer connection fees from Weber County and a lot of the areas up there, and the private water companies are about $10,000
Okay.
usually
Okay.
for these private companies to hook to sewer and water. But
And that's where if you can talk to a builder before you buy the lot, because I think one, if you're buying a lot and you have say $500,000 to work with, like you got to be extra careful. You probably shouldn't be building just because it's hard. Like I would go with like a production builder, somebody that you can step into a new home that's already built and you know the price tag.
yeah,
Otherwise, you just don't want to get into a spot where you're building a house and you run out of funds because you run into one of these issues. If you only have like a $50,000 cushion, that's not enough, in my opinion, to build.
it's just not. And you hit on a good point that I think is that you can always predict costs of building are going to be higher in popular areas. So if you're going in Syracuse, you guys all know this, that the building permits at the Home Builders Association, we monitor the regulatory costs, and you'll have a $30,000 per building permit in Syracuse, and in Ogden, it's going to be closer to 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or less. And why is because of the impact fees.
Yeah.
And so, which is sewer and water infrastructure that they've got to provide, and that's a whole other thing. But I think that's one thing when you're considering if you're tight, is what you said, is that if you'll go to lots or areas where that it's more established and less frantic on the build, you're typically those costs are going to be a little bit lower. But
while we're on that topic, so when you're counseling somebody that wants to build with you, what kind of reserve budget do you suggest? Is it 20% over what the planned expenses are, 30%? What do you say on that?
20% is what we try to, and like I say, this is in the category of people I build with. That's usually doable, but 20%. And we've only had one house in all that we've built that have gone over a 20%.
Gotcha.
Prediction, outside of that, it was 22%. Most of them are somewhere between 8 and 15% is usually where things run. Some of that's emotional, some of it's
add-ons later on.
Yeah. But I tell people if they don't have a 10% line item as part of their budget, we're not going to build.
Gotcha. So all in $1 million, they better have $1.2 million on hand. Okay.
Yeah. And you got interest rate. I mean, there's so many fluctuations that you got to just be aware of. So talk about a little bit more about septic. If you're looking at a lot that is going to require a septic tank before you purchase it, in order to know if you can build on it, it has to have like a letter of feasibility. And that means like a soil study's been done and a perk test to determine if the soil is good enough to allow the septic system to function properly. And there are lots in Ogden Valley that will not pass a perk test.
Correct.
Which means they're not buildable.
Even if they were zoned to be buildable.
They're residential lots. Nordic has a lot of these, actually. Maybe not a lot, but I've ran into them.
Yeah.
I've had people do their tests and they've failed. And so what it normally starts with is a soil study. Then they'll ask you to do a perk test. And then sometimes they'll come back and say, oh, well, we need to do groundwater monitoring. Have you had to do that before?
I have not.
So I've had to do it on, I think, 1 or 2 lots. But it's interesting. They basically monitor the runoff of an area in the springtime. So you can only do it December to like April. And they come up and they put all these pipes in the ground. And then they come up weekly and check the pipes and the runoff. But in order for it to pass the perk test, that's like a condition that has to clear. And so I've had lots that we've had under contract in the spring of one year, and they don't close until spring, summer the next year because we had to get through all these things. And you could only do it between December and April.
Wow.
So
I think there is a thing to add on the perk test, too, is location specific. We've had this part of your lot passes the perk test, this doesn't, so you got to do it here.
Yeah.
Well, that's right in the middle of the building envelope.
Right. Yeah, that is true.
It can also pass a perk test, but still not be buildable
Sure.
in the sense that you can't fit a house on what's left or it's an undesirable part of it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So-
And then another one that we ran into, I'm working on this land sale in Woodland. There's a Woodland Water Company is a parcel that borders this parcel. And because they're a public water company, they have a massive well protection zone for septics. And so even if you want to do a septic system in that area, it has to be a certain type of septic system. I can't remember the name, but there's I think it's called Pack Bed Media, Wisconsin Mound, and there's conventional systems. And each one of those systems, like conventional is going to be your cheapest one to do.
It is.
And then the other ones will go up in price just because they're a different type of system.
Mm-hmm.
We did have experience with my daughter's house up in Peterson that she was going to build. She didn't end up doing it. But
remember that,
her lot was right there on the Peterson pipeline well. And they had a little tussle over the setbacks and things like that. But she was going to have to do a mound septic system there. And, you know, you got to think about the aesthetic, because you can see some of the other houses in the neighborhood with those mounds running, and you can see them.
So it comes above grade.
Yes.
Then, oh, wow.
And you have to bring in a bunch of dirt and stuff for
Correct.
it to go in.
Pack over it. And
Yeah, it's just a big, long, linear mound that
Interesting.
comes up above the ground.
I'll
And
have to look for that now.
You've got to integrate that with your landscape, and so the design of your house
Sure.
is something that if you have to do that type of septic system.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think we're talking about a lot of pitfalls here, and we'll get, I'm sure, at the end as to how you
Why
can
does anyone
safely-
ever build with you? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, no. What we do, and you and I just went through one together,
Yeah.
where we navigate through the situation and we come out the other end doing great.
Right.
But the purpose of this, I think, is to show this is how,
Yeah.
at the end, we will talk about, don't be afraid, but
Yeah.
there's some things, if you do, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's interesting on the agent's end with land. At face value, it almost seems like, oh, well, we don't have electrical and and plumbing and roof. Like, we don't have the general inspection. Like,
It'll be easy.
what? It'll be easy. What could really go wrong? And then you dive into it. Everything that we've mentioned, and there's a lot more we're still going to go over. And some of these things are a lot harder to figure out than just sending in an inspector to go tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah.
is a challenge. And
Yeah.
and having done it enough times, like I never want a client to buy a lot and then a few years want to go build, and then they're like, crap,
Yeah.
we didn't figure this out, or we don't have this.
Yeah.
And then
Why did you sell this to me? Like,
Right.
This wasn't buildable.
yeah, so I've really tried to like dive into what needs to be done before. So on the septic systems as well, just be aware of where you would put your leach field, because that's not something you want to be driving over as well. That's where the septic
Correct.
drains into that. So you just kind of have to have this all outlined. You have if you're on a well, where's that going to go? Where's your septic tank going to go? Where's your leach field going to go? And then one other point I wanted to bring
Put
up.
it under your garden, Peyton.
Yeah.
It grows well.
Good nutrients.
That is a good point. Yeah, the grass is always greener where the septic system is. And then there's community leach fields too, where it's kind of like a hybrid, where it kind of is like a public sewer system for a community. They have their septic tanks, and then they run to a community leach field, which is interesting. Durfee Creek is like that. They have
Basin View subdivision up there.
and
It's that same
yeah. So just being aware of that. And then if you have a septic system, just be aware, like there's nothing scary about them. Like, it's recommended you pump your tank once every 5 years or so. And I'm on one, never had an issue. In fact, when we bought our house, it was built in the 70s. I don't think it had ever been pumped ever. So
Wow.
yeah.
Do you try and use special biodegradable soaps and things like that, and
no.
toilet paper, sitter, all that? You just let her rip.
Let it rip. Yeah. We have 3 kids, and me and my wife, and haven't had issues. So,
Okay.
So power's most of the time pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But there's been like one experience, like my dad did that development in Legacy Hills. There's a freaking power line running right through the development, and you think he could tie into that, but no, he had to bring it up from Morgan Valley Drive all the way up, which cost him a lot of money to trench it. It's like you have above ground poles right there. You'd think you could just tie into it. So just like research it, if you can connect, if it's stubbed. Have you found a good way to do you have a contact, or is there certain contacts in different areas on power stuff? Verifying power or anything like that? Or do you just call Rocky Mountain Power and make sure you're good?
It is the place where most people get addicted to drugs when they start having to work with Rocky Mountain Power. I'm just kidding about that. But yes, it is an insane organization. But yeah, that's really all that Again, what they call the as-built, which mean there's a set of plans showing power should be here. But we just went through this on a subdivision in Liberty, and it took me almost 6 weeks to get the information from Rocky Mountain Power. It was the right information. It's what we needed. But it was a
It just took you that long to get
process to get the guy to come out and field verify, here's the power, and here's where you can hook in.
Interesting.
So about the only thing there is you can get it, and yes, from Rocky Mountain Power, but just take a chill pill.
Yeah.
And then a persistence pill, and call often.
Sure.
So
Sure.
just a real quick side note, I don't know how detailed we want to get here, but when you call Rocky Mountain, they're really good about answering and doing that. But open up a work order and get a number and hold that next to your heart. amongst your most valuable possessions. And then each time you call them,
use that.
Here's my work order.
Because otherwise you start from the square
and then
one.
they'll
again.
log every time you call and all
Gotcha.
that. It starts to build your trail.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Rocky Mountain is your source as far as I've found.
There's been one lot in the valley that we were selling, and the lots were subdivided a while ago, probably in the 80s or something, and the lines were on the other side of the street. So we were trying to figure out how much it would cost to drop it and bore it under the road. So we had a meeting with them there. Can't remember what it costs or anything like that, but you just have to plan for it. If you're wanting to get any additional info out of them, it could take some time.
Yeah.
So, and then gas. So water, sewer, power, and gas is the fourth one. Some areas just there's not gas that ran there.
Yeah.
Have you done like propane tanks and stuff like that on
A couple of times.
any disadvantages or things you want to highlight there, or?
Well, and most of the ones we've done, in all fairness, have been more remote locations. And so
Yeah.
I think just keeping them heated through the winter and when, like cabins or whatnot are there. There is a thing that they do in a lot of these locations, Bear Lake, stuff like that, is that these companies will put a satellite GPS hookup on your tank.
Oh.
And then the gas company monitors it and it blips them when
Nice.
you're getting low, and they'll
I didn't
auto
know that.
refill those so that if you've got furnaces running, you're not there. You just never run out.
Yeah.
So
Sweet.
that can be a thing. I think you can do that on any property that you have to use propane, but
And a lot of like it's nice because there's an easy fix to that. Like propane, it might not be ideal because you have to refill it and you have to change some of your appliances to run on propane, but
Yeah.
it's an easy problem to solve. And it's nice. Like some people love having propane just because it's like I have a year's supply of gas at my
Yeah.
house,
Is
which
that-
can be nice.
I've not lived in a house with that. Is that about how long a big old tank like that would keep a
just
house
depends
going?
on how big your tank is, how much you use.
Yeah.
But we're talking
A
9
house-
to 12 months.
A house that I just sold in Eden, it was like 2,700 square feet, little Rambler. They had a probably 500-gallon tank, and I think they filled it once every like 6 months.
Okay.
So I'd say a bigger house, you'd probably need bigger tanks, double them up.
Gotcha.
And you can bury them, so you'll never see them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
In fact, that would be the preferred method.
Right.
Or like AmeriGas, these companies will lease you tanks, and they'll lease them for basically nothing because they're selling you gas. What I've seen.
Yeah.
So that kind of covers the utilities. The only other thing is like internet. Everybody nowadays wants super high speed internet, and like there's only certain areas that have say fiber or something like that. But with Starlink and stuff, like internet is becoming less and less of a
Yeah.
issue. I would say. I think
I
most
agree.
areas you're
I agree.
probably okay.
But it is something that I think is with when you're buying a lot is worth looking
Yeah.
into
Right.
in our work from home world.
Yep.
If you're up there stuck with some kind of dial up, does that
Yep.
make the lot a game changer for you? So I definitely think it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
So, and just to back up to gas a little bit,
Yeah.
they have gotten a little more excited about their process lately, and Dominion only uses one contractor to put your gas service in, even if you're stubbed, and they're pretty proud, getting a little more proud of their. I mean, on a normal house, it's not going to be horrible, but you could be up to $5,000 getting your gas service in from.
So
them,
when I did mine, because I bought my house, we didn't have gas.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, he was super nice with Dominion.
yeah,
I think it was $1,000. I was surprised. I was shocked
wow.
because I was thinking it was going to be more, but it doesn't surprise me that I guess they're raising their prices now.
yeah, it is. There's something in the last year and a half or so that they've just gone a little bit.
Huh.
We do have some connections with Dominion. They do actually. We like working with them generally. They're really good, but yeah,
just to be aware.
they're a little more spendy now.
Plan for it.
No, that's good to know. So this next topic, I'm sure you're going to love. And you run into this way more than we do, but CC&Rs and like the design guidelines. So can you kind of educate people on what those are, why they should care, and what you've like? I'm sure you have a bunch of stories on this.
Buy a remote island that you own the whole thing.
Yeah, for real.
You're the mayor. You're the president.
It is an interesting thing. We could spend all day on that. So it is I think overall, I would say take it extremely seriously. Read those things with a fine-tooth comb. I'm not going to tell you to maybe take it to an attorney, but it certainly wouldn't hurt even to do that and say, interpret this, tell me what this means.
Right.
Also, I might attend one of their meetings and get to know those people.
Yeah. Because in any HOA, they're going to have their CCNRs. Kind of, some of them will have like an architectural control committee and like all this stuff. I mean, I get why they do it. They're trying to control the way certain communities look. If it's gated, they want the houses to look similar. They don't want like a sore thumb popping up in there. But you just have to be aware of, because sometimes they'll be like, you can't have, like your house has to be a certain size. You know, the main floor can't be under 2,000 square feet and can't be over 6,000 square feet or whatever. Like they just put these restrictions, and as long as what you're wanting to build fits what they're saying, you're good. But if you're even borderline on that, I would be aware. Down to the client we were working with, he really wanted a pickleball court.
Yeah.
And he couldn't buy in this one community because they said, no, you can't have a pickleball court.
Correct.
Dang.
It is the document that almost trumps all things, and there's a lot of heartbreak there if you're not.
Yeah.
And again, with all of this, don't you guys think? I certainly do, and like our deal we just did, and the others that we're going to do, hopefully with Shay and these other things, is bring the contractor in, bring some experts in.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring my sewer guy in, my septic guy, my well guy. I'm going to bring all these collaborative people in before we buy the lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be due diligence phase.
Right.
Yep.
But
So we're under contract, but we haven't purchased it. And that's when we bring you in. We bring,
I certainly would, or maybe even just a little bit of a little collab even before you put an offer on. I'm okay with that, but you're not going to want to get in depth. But in that phase, you spend some money, and we're going to talk about some other places that you can do that. And but CCNRs is a big one.
It's
Our
huge.
team will grab a hold of that, and they will go fine-tooth comb through that, and they'll develop a list that says, okay, your house can have these, it can't have this, it can do this, it can be so many square feet, it can do all that, and we present that to the clients and say, here's your box, here's the envelope.
So can we back up for a second to, I don't know if we've even said what CCNRs is yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So codes, covenants, and restrictions.
Yeah.
But so question, Steve and I were actually emailing about this the other week. So you can have CCNRs, but not have an HOA, right? And so that would mean that the CCNRs are coming from the city.
Correct. Or
and
the county.
Or the county.
Or the developer.
Or the developer. Yes. I've seen that on county documents, the developer. Yep. And so within there, that's where they say, okay, this part of Ogden or this part of Ogden Valley, you can have horses on this property, right? But then you could, a double layer of protection, I guess you could say, is an HOA. Comes up with their own set of rules on top of the CCNRs, correct?
So you'll have like your county zoning and guidelines. So if it's not in a HOA and they don't have like developer CCNRs, then it would just fall under like the zoning. But if there's an HOA, it's going to have CCNRs.
It trumps, it's a legal entity that they formed that
Yeah.
trumps the county's stuff.
So the loosest version, I guess you could say, is just the zoning. If
The
there's
county,
none of this other
yeah.
stuff, county zoning,
Yeah.
then you might have CCNRs,
Uh-huh.
which is a little tighter.
Yeah.
And then there could even be an HOA, which
Private
is
HOA.
Yeah.
private HOA for that
Yeah.
subdivision.
And then on top of an HOA, because some have very loose HOAs, if it's a more strict one, they will have an architectural control committee, and they'll have design guidelines on top of their CCNRs.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to throw one thing in there too that we're seeing more is in these HOAs now. These design review committees are starting to require deposits. And so it's not unusual before you build that you have to pay them $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 that they hold. And,
Gotcha.
and so that if you are not in compliance, they have teeth.
So there was a lot I just sold actually, and they had a $5,000 architectural control committee fee to review your plans. $5,000.
So a real world example of this is if the HOA says, yes, you can build a shop on your property, but then the architectural committee says you can build it, but it's got to look a lot like your home, which might require stone or stucco or whatever, right? Yeah. So then
A lot of times, if there's an HOA, like the architectural control committee is going to be kind of intertwined with the
Gotcha.
HOA. Yeah, some things to think about though. That's a big one. One other one that just recently started coming out. Have you run into they call it a PID, Public Infrastructure District. So
I have not.
Morgan, Mountain Green just did one. And basically, from my understanding, I should have researched this one more.
off the cuff, what
Off
do you
the
know
cuff.
about it?
So basically, it's when the developer and the county are trying to put in more infrastructure. The developer doesn't necessarily want to pay for it, neither does the county, so they'll pass it on to the community.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a fee.
It's an impact fee.
It's an impact fee basically to bring in sewer and all these amenities to this new development, and they pay for it. It's like another line item on their taxes, I think. And I think
Is it called a levy? What's a levy?
God,
Different thing.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
It's an assessment of some
Okay.
kind.
Yeah.
Yep.
But this is just another line item. I think eventually it can be like after so many years it goes away once it's paid down or paid off or whatever. But just an additional fee. And so like on the MLS, you can search like, is this a part of a PID is what they call it. But I've only seen it a handful of times. But just something else to kind of keep an eye out for and be aware of.
I think we're going to look into that one as a home builders association. That one sounds dicey.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I love that.
Yeah, it's the Rome townhomes in Mountain Green have it.
Oh.
So yeah, just be aware.
I know that that's a big thing that the state legislature is kind of combating right now, and really a part of the awareness is these cities and towns that are charging these impact fees, but they're not allocating the funds to build infrastructure. They're just sucking it into other areas.
Yeah,
And that's illegal, actually.
Yeah.
So that sounds like an interesting one. But
yeah.
we'll watch that.
So let's jump into geohazard areas. Steve, I'm sure you run into this a lot, and you probably I'm familiar with it, but we'll have you run with this because
Well, we just had a recent experience out in North Ogden with this, where the lot had been on the market for a while. The people, kind of bought it. It was 9 acres for $400,000. It was a real unicorn. They were so excited, and got a hold of it. And is it sellable? Is everything good? They asked some very basic questions, but they jumped and bought it before they did a study, an in-depth study. And so that's the first thing we do when they call us, say, okay, we need a full geo study. And this one was extensive. We spent over $10,000 on this one.
Wow.
Turns out we found a fault line going right through this thing. Jeez. And did the previous owners know it? Yeah, they absolutely did. And so it didn't get disclosed in whatever. That's a whole separate thing. But we're talking about how to keep you guys safe that are, working with us or other agents and what to do. So the geo study found that. Luckily, we were able to weave through it and made the building envelope almost too small. We had to get some variances from the city, had to do a few things, but we were able to get the deal done.
Yeah.
But they're building just right next to a fault line.
Yikes.
crazy. So Weber County has like a map. It's their geohazard area map. You can get online, look at it, and if you're in the red area, you have to have at least a geo reconnaissance report done on the property. And that just tells you what the property looks like. I think those initial reports are a couple grand, like not that expensive. But then if you do a more in-depth one, because when you guys did that one, they were probably trenching. Were they boring holes and stuff like that too?
100%.
Yeah.
And they'll even bore on some of these less $2,000 or $3,000 for one. It just depends on the area. If they're suspect and if there's some issues, and as they bored and they looked, they saw some things like, we got to do more, we got to go more. So this one, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you with that cost, but it was worth every penny. And but most of them are $2,000 to $3,000, $4,000. But they'll bore holes, they'll go down, they'll check groundwater, they'll give you a complete engineering report that says, so Basin View, we had that study done, and they said, you've got a soil down under here that is like a sponge, and when it gets wet, it swells. And so to build safely on this, you have to overdig and bring in structural fill, or we've got to put a waterproof cap over this spongy soil so water can't get to it. But it's all engineered and stamped by them. They're soil engineers. And so if you follow their instructions, then their liability kicks in, everybody's liability kicks in behind, keeps you safe, keeps your project safe.
Yeah. I think on a more typical lot, more average lot, the one you and I are doing right now in North Salt Lake, that's in the middle of a subdivision that's already built. It's kind of the last lot not built on. That was, I think she paid between $3,000 and $5,000. They did still bore holes. So I think that's probably.
And it came back and it was like, yeah, this is good. Be aware of this.
Well, they found out it was a dumping ground. The other builders around it and thrown their
fill soil.
So we've got 7 to 11 feet of
fill
that's on top that we have to remove. And
so she got a little nervous about that. But then I said, hey, call Steve. He's not too worried. We're going to dig you a basement. So we'll get rid of 10 to 12 feet of that already. And then you're like, yeah, maybe we'll just take off another foot, and it might cost a little, but not a huge deal.
Here's the thing with geo, and is that it tells you what it's going to cost you to build.
Yeah.
It takes the surprise out of it. I have hardly ever seen a geo study that says you can't build. I'm sure they're out there. I'm just saying me.
Yeah. There's always a way
Most of the
around
time,
it.
It just says, here's what we found, and here's what you got to do to make it sound.
And I guess that's not the thing that people should be worried about is the cost of the geo study. It's the cost of what it's going to take to build with the findings of the geo study, right? Like the Basin View house, like you were saying, that additional work probably cost them quite a bit more money. Like, would you say it, like, depending on the report of a geo study, like they could require you to bore down into like some natural bedrock or do these different things, and that could, I mean, you could really stack on the additional costs by having to do these bores or these to latch into the
helical piers.
Yeah, all of that stuff.
Or requirements for retaining all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you're talking significant money here that you stand to get hit with if you don't do this.
So I used to sell helical piers, and if you have to do that on the whole house, I mean, you know too. Yeah. I never did a whole house. I did it after the fact, but I mean, you're looking at $80,000 to $100,000 after, on top of everything else. Yeah. To pier the whole foundation all the way around.
So it just gives you the power to predict that, but usually the mitigations are slight, and you're going to find out if there's some groundwater-ish generally. We've had a miss on that one once, but mostly you're going to find that issue too. So.
Yeah.
No, that's good to know. So first off, on the geohazard area, check the lot on the map, see if it's in an area where it will be required. And then I've even, I'm sure, well, let me ask you this. Even a lot in an area that doesn't require one, would you still recommend geostudies to be done?
I will not build a house without one.
Interesting.
You build with me, we will do a geo study. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. How many of these builders where their houses are sliding off the hills thought they had done everything right?
Yeah.
There's risk. And as, in our data as a home builders association, the number one issue in this state is land movement. Mm-hmm. Number one as far as structure threats. So why not?
So no exceptions for you, right?
Look,
doesn't matter the neighborhood.
If we have some act of God or some earthquake and your house slides or goes sideways or whatever, and God forbid anybody gets hurt, we don't see that, but just we're talking structure safety here. You're backed up by a certified stamped state licensed building engineer with all of his liability, my liability, everything kicks in to make you whole. And that's what we're talking about.
Well, there was a big house we had under contract a few months ago, $2 million plus house. Beautiful house. Yeah. And I had it under contract with my buyer was a builder. Built a ton of homes back, can't remember what state he was in.
Yeah.
But he walked in there with a laser and a level and a tape. Well, he actually went and rented equipment from one of the areas. I'm like, this is wild. I've never had a buyer laser off all the rooms.
Yeah.
He found that in one of the rooms, the floor dropped just over 3 inches in a 30-foot, 20 to 30-foot span. It was wild.
That's a lot. A lot.
And then we had a structural engineer come up, and they're like, yeah, there's stuff happening here. We don't know to what extent. We couldn't find any geostudies done on the property. They ended up just walking away from it because they're like, we love the house, we love the views, but we're not willing to take on this kind of risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that's why, right?
So my takeaway would be and we just went through this, is before you buy that lot in your due diligence, pony up the money. It's money so well spent on a hillside lot. Now, if I'm sitting down in the flat valley or whatnot, I'm maybe less concerned. I would still do it, and I would still
recommend
insist.
it on a flat lot.
Yeah, because you've got, what's going to be the liquefaction factor in an earthquake? What's my groundwater situation look like? How deep can I put my house in? Those are factors, too, that could affect the look of your house. If you can't go down in with your house,
you have to go up.
What's the design?
Yeah.
It may not less financially impactful, but we just spent all this money on a lot and a house plan, and then we hate it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. That's why we're just like, no, it's $5,000. If you can't pony that up on that, then probably you need to go to a production builder and something where they're shouldering all the risk.
Well, and if you're buying this lot in advance, we're able to get a lot of the sellers to cover some of these costs in some cases.
There you go.
And so you can ask the seller, hey, we'd like to buy this lot, but we need to know what's here. It's got to have a letter of feasibility. It's got to have a geo study. If you can provide these, especially in the area that it's required, I always ask the sellers to do it. And
I think one thing, and I don't know if we throw it on there somewhere else, but you got to check how its floodplain status is too.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
That'll make a huge financial impact on you because you will not be able to get insurance in certain areas if you're in a FEMA designated floodplain.
And that's very easy to check. You can ask your agent. There's a website, pull it up, boom, we know right off the bat. I was going to say, as far as time frame on the geo study, I think it was about 1 to 2 weeks for that reconnaissance, which gives you a pretty good idea, a high-level idea of if you can buy it or not, build on it or not. Right. And then I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks that we finally got the full report back. Right. By that point, we had already bought it with what you and I are doing. And we felt good enough about how that reconnaissance came back that we closed on it and then after got the
full report. No, that's good to know. And I'm sure depending on who you use, time frames might vary. But okay, boundary lines. This is another big one. Do you have surveys done?
Every time.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever not without a survey.
Cool.
That's part of the deal.
Yeah. Even if it's like, say, a pretty recent community and there was a survey done 5 years ago, would you rely on that, or would you still have them come out and like pin the corners?
It'd be on the fence for me. If I'm moving in, and we just don't build as much in these places, but like a more flatland
cookie cutter neighborhood,
subdivision where
the fence
a year ago they just developed these lots. No, I'm not getting a survey. I'm okay there.
The pins are probably still there. You probably still find them. But if you can't find the pins, definitely beneficial to have somebody come out, do the 4 corners at least, make sure you know where you're going to build, check your building envelope, all of that. So that's good to know.
Typically, you may want to put up a fence. You may want to do any of that. And before you do that, to avoid living next to your enemy, a survey's good.
Yeah.
And so it's not that expensive. I think as a general rule, it's a good thing. We do it every time.
Yeah.
You can... I just got a quote. The cheapest one I found was $1,500, but at the same time, I got another quote for like $3,000. So somewhere in there for a basic lot, not up in the rural mountains, but in a neighborhood or so, you can expect about $1,500.
Yeah. Get the title commitment while you're looking at the lot. Review it. That'll tell you kind of the history of the lot. Are there easements, boundary line agreements, judgments, liens, all of that? We look at those quite heavily. And so just make sure you see that before you purchase anything and you understand what's there. We didn't really talk too much about like easements and stuff like that, but just look into the title report. It'll tell you if there's any access points or things you need to be aware of. Sometimes even you'll have utility easements coming through that you have to be aware of and stay away from. And then I threw in greenbelt and rollback taxes. This is just a rule. If there's a tax break, if you have a house or if you have land that's over 5 acres, you can put it in what's called greenbelt, and you'll pay like agricultural taxes on it.
Right.
If you pull it out of greenbelt, you're going to have to pay rollback taxes for the past 5 years at what that property would have been taxed at.
for a normal residential rate.
For a normal residential rate. And so being aware of that, if you have more land and it is in Greenbelt and you plan on pulling it out, you're going to have some additional costs there. And the county assessor can quote you the numbers and all that. And you don't have to pull it all out. You can pull out, say you had 6 acres, you're building on a half an acre. You can pull out 1 to a half an acre, pull that out, pay the taxes on it, put the rest back in Greenbelt, and then still have like a low tax there. Have you ran into that very much?
Not
Is
a
that more
ton.
the owners?
Most of the people I've built with don't have any interest in keeping it in Greenbelt. And
Gotcha.
So they just do their thing.
Yeah.
So again, I'm just have a hard time speaking to that.
Right. I just wanted to put that in there just in case. Like we've done some larger lots that are 20 plus acres, and I think those ones, it definitely makes sense to put a cow on it and take advantage of the Greenbelt status. So
We have had a couple of clients that have bought big properties and then they've subdivided them, but that's been before me.
yeah.
And I'm sure they've run into that because you pull it out of Greenbelt and have to hit those taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then just the topography, like knowing, like, and you guys have done this amazing on your houses. Like you build the house to fit the lot and the land, and that comes, like, there's a lot of forethought that goes into that. Like, what does this client want to build? How can we position the house on the lot? Like Morgan's house, like that was not a very desirable lot, and you guys just knocked it out of the park with how you built it.
Yeah.
So can you talk to that a little bit, like what you look for there, and kind of your processes on looking at land, and if there's any steepness or flat or anything like that?
This is a big deal, and this is where, if you've got a good knowledgeable real estate agent like you guys or something, but I don't know how you tell that as a client, I think I would also want to get the opinion of a contractor too, in relationship to not so much is it feasible. There is no answer until we do a geo study. But number 2 is the costs are astronomically different with elevation of land, astronomically. And I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes from flat to a tip.
Wow.
It can be this one we're doing in Pole Patch with the, where we found the fault line.
Yeah.
I mean, it's $500,000 to get the foundation in.
Wow.
That's where we're at. The retaining and the excavation stuff.
So
like
forget
that.
my $100,000 I threw out for piers. Wow.
Well, that's concrete. That's everything. But I mean, just to get it to where we can start framing, I think it was almost $300,000 for excavation, retaining, and the dirt work in there. So
That is crazy.
So, and again, you don't need to be scared by that, but you just need to know.
Yeah.
Right.
You just need to know, and topography is a big deal. Now, we always do a study, but it's it's usually with the architect, so that when they're drawing the plans, they can get it exactly right. We don't usually do the study; it's mostly just visual observing. Is that this lot is so? I don't know on that one as far as careful, but I might suggest, in addition to a good real estate agent's advice on that, also maybe a contractor in. Ask your agent who he likes to work with as a contractor, and have him just come up and buy him some bubble gum and have him come and look at it.
Well, like if you want a rambler or with a walkout and you're buying a flat lot, like it's probably not going to work out. So you just and people might not. They'll be like, "Oh, this is perfect. It's a flat lot." Well, you want a gentle slope lot if you want to walk out, or like just being
Walkout
aware.
basement.
Yeah. Just being aware of that, and like Morgan's house, which we have a video of that. Like that was such a cool house. You have the garage and like a lower landing, and then everything else went up, and then there was a bridge across and the lot was kind of like sloped up. So you did like a step system, which was awesome. And it's just cool how, like if the client has the vision and you can go to the lot and be like, oh yeah, like this is doable here. We might need to get the geo study and verify, but we should totally be able to build, that style of house here.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But I guess the client first needs to know what they want, right? What their vision is, because you make that happen.
And you can tell them with those things, like you use Morgan House, for example. One of the other reasons that it's shaped like it is, and it kind of follows that angle from the garage and up, is because if you'll notice right behind it, there is a drainage, a natural ditch. you can't touch those without all these permissions. And so we also had to get it to fit in front of that with a certain setback.
Yeah.
So you literally built over it with a bridge, right?
No. We had to stay away from it. No, I'm just saying that the shape.
So I see.
The shape of the house follows that wandering drainage
yeah.
behind the house.
Yeah.
Also does that kind of wander.
So was the
because we had
bridge?
to stay away from it.
Was that something that he just wanted? It wasn't need. Okay.
Yeah,
I
no,
thought there was actually something that
Went under the
yeah
bridge.
yeah
That'd be cool.
like drainage went right under there, so you had to gap it.
We'll see. We'll see. But to move that drainage and whatnot, again, we're getting back into these
Yeah.
water and environmental issues. So that was a restrictive deal. But you're going to look at that with topography. You're going to go up there and you can see, okay, we got this drainage, and somebody like a contractor that has some experience can say, yeah, we got some. If we choose to breach that or change it, we've got all this regulatory stuff we've got to walk through, and what does that run in the law?
Right.
Or we stay away from it. Can you still get what you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a very good point.
So,
and then lastly, I'm glad you added this: fire suppression requirements. So you'll know way more about this than we do.
me and the fire marshal are buddies here.
Yeah. Tell us about this. What does it mean?
I think I first got educated with that lot right up behind you that we're hopefully going to build on someday. And it sets back, it's got an easement going through 2 other people's lots back into it. And there's already an easement, it's already established. So we go to get some original or preliminary approvals on stuff. We start checking around, and the fire marshal's like, yeah, that easement's not wide enough. It's only 20 feet wide. Okay, well, that used to be the thing. We've changed that now. So 26 feet wide, it has to be at least that to get our fire trucks in and out so they can pass by each other. And so since it's 20 feet wide, you're going to have to sprinkler system your entire house and any structure up in there. Okay, fine, but that's with the 2 structures they were doing, it's about $50,000 each to do that.
So does that sprinkler system, it goes off the easement, or is it square footage of the house, or what determines if a house has to have that?
There's several requirements with fire. One is any house, any structure over 10,000 is sprinkler.
Okay.
In this county. Now, each county might be a little different, but in this county, in Weber County,
I think Morgan might even be less than that.
it could be.
But yeah.
It could be.
I know, yeah.
So that's one thing that requires sprinklers. Number 2 is access. If your driveway's too narrow, or, and here's the other thing, is that once that it gets back in there, if those trucks don't have a turnaround, that can also determine if you have to have a sprinkler. Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's a deal.
I know the ridges in Morgan have to have them.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's the width of that driveway, the entry to the
I
neighborhood.
heard somewhere it was like 5,000 square feet,
In
but I think
Morgan.
every county's different. And
Sure.
then like my mother-in-law built a property in Summit County, and it was small cabin, had to sprinkler it.
Really?
So it just depends. But again,
Well,
that's an
that's
EU.
the distance from a fire hydrant
Yeah.
is creating that sprinkler. If you're more than 500 feet from a hydrant, you have to sprinkle. So there's all these things. Or if your driveway is deeper than 150 feet and it's not 26 feet wide with a turnaround, then you have to sprinkle. It's a thing, and there's too much to go through. Those are some good general rules. So here's another one: the retreat, an established subdivision. Fire hydrants everywhere, everything. You're in mom and pop neighborhood up there. You have to sprinkle every house in that. Why? Because there's only one way in.
There's
Oh.
not an ingress and an egress. Interesting.
Correct.
Wow.
So that caught us. We didn't check that. And so thank goodness for a Weber County building inspector who normally we would not be happy with. But he comes up 4-way and says, I'm not seeing a sprinkler system in here. And of course, but it threw us sideways for almost $50,000. An unexpected pop, a 6-week delay in the project because I didn't look hard enough for it. And so I think even an established subdivision, that's a question to ask from now on. Are sprinklers required by some means? Is there a deal?
Isn't it crazy? Like you do this day in and day out, and it's crazy how like even somebody that does it nonstop, like you eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff, how you can still get sideswiped. So imagine somebody just trying to do this one-off on their own, saving some money, not trying to hire somebody. At the end of the day, they're probably going to get hit with all these additional costs. They don't have the connections or relation. It's going to take way long. Like it's just crazy what goes into this, like building a new house.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And again, I think there's always solutions to things, and we get through it. You know, the house down in there on River Road up in the valley that figured out they were not in one floodplain but 2 different drainages, and so it's just like, oh, this deal killer all goes to crap. But working with FEMA over the process of 9 months, we've got a solution. We bring fill in, we raise it up, we route the channels around them. And lo and behold, now they don't have to buy flood insurance. They're out of the plane. FEMA certified it and stamped it.
Wow.
Took a lot of work. So there's solutions, but I think the important thing is don't rush into these lots. There's a lot of stuff to check in, and get a good agent. Come work with Mountain Buff. Come talk to us, or a good contractor, and get some advice right up front.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like it's never too early to start talking with the builder.
Nope.
Right.
Like, even if you're 5 years out before you want to build, now's the time to start getting all these plans in place and figuring out what needs to be done, because there's probably stuff that you could work on now that's going to save you time and money in the long run if you would just get it done now.
100%.
And even if it's in a neighborhood that's already established and it seems like an obvious, easy build, still, as we discussed, there's things that pop up.
Just like those houses in Draper that sit off the mountain, like established neighborhood.
Or the retreat. You know, every house has to be sprinkled.
Yeah.
Went through the architectural review committee, went through all the permitting process, and on the permit, there's one little word that says fire suppression required, typed in one little odd box.
Oh my God!
Out of the way, and they're like, "See, it's right there." So, yeah,
that's crazy. Well, this has been super insightful, Steve. Thank you for coming on and
Thanks for
educating
having
us. We always recommend you. You've been great. And anybody that reaches out to you, we always get amazing feedback. So thank you for all that you do. And I
Same with that. We love you guys too. And you're so competent and you're so honest. And you made a comment earlier about how I want to be careful to take care of the client. That's really true.
Yeah.
I've never seen it like that with many other people.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are our heroes.
It goes a long way. So thank you, and I'm sure this will be helpful for many people looking to buy land. So
thanks a lot.
Awesome. Perfect.